Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our readers and listeners of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion, and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. Before we get into our talk today, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience at SmithWeekly, including Mike P., Jared W., Jackie A., and Brent S. We have on Steve Robertson, President and CEO of Sun Metals, a Canadian-focused explorer and developer advancing the Stardust project in British Columbia. The company is listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol SUNM and also on the US OTC markets under the symbol SMTTF. Steve, thank you for coming on.
Thanks very much for having me.
So Sun Metals sort of kind of showed up on the TSXV in June 2018, if I remember. Give the audience your background and then tell us how you came in at Sun Metals and with the Oxygen Group.
Okay, well, I'm an exploration geologist by background, so I've spent most of my career working in British Columbia in that field. I spent 24 years with a company called Imperial Metals. It's a producer here in British Columbia with a fairly extensive exploration portfolio. And I guess the big claim to fame I have from my career with Imperial Metals was the deep drilling on the Red Chris deposit. So we purchased Red Chris. It was a small, low-grade deposit that had been known for a long time. And through our exploration, we were actually able to prove that it was indeed a big world-class deposit. They've, I think, got over 20 million ounces of gold and 16 billion pounds of copper defined there now, and Newcrest has just come in to spend 1.1 billion to purchase 70% of that project. So that was a great experience for me. I went on to do the corporate affairs role. I was company spokesman, worked a lot on permitting, worked a lot on First Nation community engagement, and I did 11 different agreements with First Nations while I was in that role. So I got a lot of great experience when I was at Imperial, but I was getting further away from exploration the more I moved up in seniority, and I wanted to get back to exploration, which wasn't happening at Imperial. And so I took advantage of the opportunity to join Mark O'Day and the group over at Oxygen Capital, where they had formed a private company to facilitate the option of a project that I knew well, Stardust. And I knew about this project because the world leading authority in this type of deposit is a fellow by the name of Dr. Peter McGaugh from Tucson, Arizona. And Peter and I are friends. He told me about this project. He'd worked on it previously and felt very strongly about the potential of the project. And so I thought, well, the opportunity to go and work with a great bunch of people with a tremendous track record on a great project was simply too alluring. So I left Imperial after 24 years and struck out on my own as the CEO of Sun Metals. And we went public actually in May of 2018, did the reverse takeover of a shell. And in our first season of exploration, we've really hit it out of the park and had a tremendous experience just exploring here in British Columbia, Tier 1 jurisdiction, and looking forward to getting out there for 2019.
So, Steve, I want to ask you just briefly about Imperial Metals. How do you think things were kind of going there towards the end? We've been in kind of a low in the resource market. Sentiment's been low. Prices have been low. Things have been quite tough and lean, as you can imagine, and with the exception of just that pop in 2016 that occurred for the first half of the year. What do you think was kind of going through the heads there when they finally were able to kind of resolve with Newcrest coming in, really kind of, for lack of better words, kind of save what was going on at Imperial? What's your thoughts on that? And it was management working pretty hard for quite a while trying to find someone to maybe come in and help them out?
Yeah, it's a great company, great people behind the company, and they've got some really great assets there. But unfortunately, they had a balance sheet problem. They had too much debt. And, I'm sure it was difficult for them to actually do the transaction with Newcrest and give away 70% of their baby. But at the end of the day, that really is a positive move that's going to allow them to move forward. And eventually, of course, what it's going to allow is for them to fully realize the potential of Red Chris. The open pit wasn't going to do it. I'm pretty sure that they're going to move ahead and develop a block cave mine on that deposit so that they can access some of that deeper mineralization that we found there. And, that's the key is being able to put the capital in that's going to allow them to develop that is really going to be a game changer for the mine and for the company.
So Steve, what is it that really drives consistent success at the Oxygen Group? Can you kind of give us a look inside the group playbook as to how companies like Sun Metals fit into the game plan?
I think it's a very disciplined approach. These guys have had a number of successes over the years, and the themes that continue to come up, three of them come immediately to mind. First of all, data-rich projects. So the group as a whole goes out and looks for projects that have had a lot of work done on them in the past, and that certainly applies to Stardust. We get to de-risk the project through the efforts of others that way, and then the group can put a different lens on the exploration and build value more easily as we move forward. It's something that's worked over and over again, and as long as it continues to work, I'm sure that's going to be the continuing trend within the group here. Second thing that Oxygen Group does is they have a great ability to attract good people with a good track record of success. And so, a lot of this business is about people, and it's not as much about the asset. It's pretty easy to take a great asset and do nothing with it or turn it into a disaster, but it's good people that makes everything work. And so they've got a great track record of being able to attract good people to work on good projects. And then the third thing is they really do view themselves as investors. This is a incubator environment. It's not an environment where the private company is set up to prosper. It's actually the public companies that are set up to prosper. So everything's done at cost here. No management fee, no markups or anything like that. We have a bunch of shared resources within the office, and it really is an environment that allows junior companies to grow value for shareholders through exploration.
Steve, would you prescribe to the comments about grade is king with resource projects, or would you really say that management is king first?
Well, I think that both are absolutely essential. You can't have only one of those things without the other. You need to have projects that obviously have great people involved in them to be able to help realize the value that's hidden. But the other thing that is becoming so obvious to us in today's age is that grade is king. There have been a lot of low-grade, high capital cost mines put into production in recent years where the capital costs just bury the project. And without a big spike in commodity prices, it's impossible for the company to dig out from that hole. And so we're seeing a real flight to quality. And that flight to quality is referring to not only tier one jurisdictions in the world where you actually wake up in the morning and know that you still own your deposit, but it's also talking about grade. And higher grade deposits are certainly becoming more and more prominent on the radar screen of the big mining companies.
Right. And, you just hope that the good management teams get to that good project and you put both of those together, because we know what can happen when you have a great project, but a terrible management team. That doesn't seem to work out too well most of the time.
Yeah. Unfortunately, our industry has got a history of some of those train wrecks along the way. And this group has had a great success record of avoiding those.
So I want to step back for just a moment, kind of look at the gold price, the gold, kind of the markets there, kind of high level natural resources. Where do you think we are with kind of the gold price and sentiment towards gold equities at this point after kind of the quick pop that happened in the first half of 2016?
Yeah, well, I tend to agree with most of the analysts that we see out there, and they, I think in general, think that gold is going higher from here, and for a number of reasons, but a lot of it's got to do with where the U.S. dollar is going to go. And I think that there's a lot of belief that there are no currencies to go to at this point. Everybody would like to be able to turn to the euro. Everybody thought that was going to be the place that people could hide out for safety reasons, but that's proven not to be the case. A lot of people are thinking that the U.S. dollar is going to be showing weakness in coming years, probably partly by choice of the Americans. And there's just all sorts of reasons to believe that the currency of choice in the future is going to be gold. And so I think that there is no better place to be than gold, and in particular, copper-rich gold deposits. I mean, copper is also, I'm a huge bull on the copper market going forward. as well as copper. So I think that Stardust project is perfect for Sun Metals.
Absolutely. I think that it's really just a win question for gold and kind of when that rolls over. And the challenge with the US dollar, of course, is it's one of the, they have all got dirt on their face, but the US dollar still seems to come through most of the time the cleanest. But it'll be interesting to see, when the dollar does fall, what kind of, how that reflects upon other currencies. And of course, the price of gold when that starts to happen. And so it's really interesting setup we have now. We have the Fed, making a 180-degree turn on their policy. And so there's really a number of things that are happening. I think investors get impatient sometimes, but I think it's really just a when question, certainly not if. Outside of copper and gold, because I know those are the two places you're really liking, and I know Sun Metals aligns with those two metals, but what other metal do you like in the sector over the next few years that really has your attention?
Well, behind copper on the base metal side, I would say zinc has got a pretty bright future. The inventories have been going lower for quite some time there, and somewhat like copper. Copper is a much bigger market than zinc, but there's some similarities there in terms of not only good consumption but also increasing pressure on the supply side. And mines aren't easy to develop anymore. Big mines in tier 1 jurisdictions are difficult to put into operation, so there's a huge lag time between discovery and operation, and so you can get a supply crunch that's going to last not for 6 months, but for several years. And when you get a situation set up like that, you have, of course, increasing commodity prices. So, yeah, I think that behind copper, zinc would be my number one choice on the base metal side.
Let's move to Sun Metals. Give us a company snapshot as to the management team, some of the key people there, the capital structure, and then also the key shareholders on the roster, what you're doing to align yourself with shareholders at these current prices.
I'll start. I think there's 3 categories of people in the company that we need to talk about. First of all, the founders and the board of the company, the Oxygen Group, Mark O'Day, Donald McGuinness, and Sean Tetzlaff are the 3 principals of Oxygen, and they're all investors in the company and on the board of directors. And they've been able to attract Glenn Garrett to the board. He's one of the founders of Lorraine Copper, who was the original vendor of the property to Sun Metals. Now Rick Bales has joined the board. We're just having our AGM on Friday, and Rick and myself will hopefully be joining the board after the shareholder vote at the AGM. And Rick is a guy that's been involved with Oxygen in the past. He was a board member on True Gold, which was a nice takeout in, I think it was 2016. A geologist that's been around Vancouver for many years and got a tremendous success record behind him. On the management side, in addition to myself, the big addition in 2018 was Ian Neal. He's the VP of Exploration, a real key player in the group. He was the 2003 Bill Dennis Award winner for his role in the discovery of 50 million ton massive sulfide deposit in the Northwest Territories for Wolfton in 2003. Ian is a very solid guy. He's been involved in successor companies to Wolfton, ending up with MMG. And when they shut down their office in 2017, Ian thought that he was going to take a couple of years off to spend with his family, and I interrupted his plans and convinced him to come and join us here. And it's just been a tremendous add to our company, because he, of course, brings along a cast of very solid characters with him, and he's been able to attract a sort of a star group to work on the project. The third category of people in the company is the technical advisory board, which is basically the dream team of geology. We've got Peter McGaw, as I mentioned earlier. He's the world's leading authority in carbonate replacement deposits. Jerry Ray, who is a world recognized expert in skarn deposits, and Jim Oliver. Jim is another one he's PhD in structural geology and got a tremendous track record of exploration and success, mostly here in British Columbia, but an international experience roster as well. So really the group as a whole, we've got good experience from top to bottom of the company, and we set ourselves up well for success that way.
And can you give us a little bit on the capital structure and maybe go into the shareholder roster?
Yeah, capital structure, after the takeover of Lorraine, which we just completed a couple of weeks ago, that was the company that was the original optioner of the property to us. When it came to getting close to the end of that option agreement, it was pretty obvious to us that it was more advantageous to both the shareholders of Lorraine and Sun Metals to just take the company over. And so we've completed that, and that's resulted in us having about 118 million shares outstanding. Our fully diluted will be about 165 million. 34 million shares are owned by insiders and founders of the company. Those are pooled and escrowed shares that will be released over a 3-year period. So we've got a pretty good shareholder base with the inside group owning such a large portion of it. And in addition to that, most of the investors that came in our IPO were retail. So we had 5 institutionals come in at that point, but mostly in a small way. So it was largely retail, and retail in Canada right now, that means high net worth folks that are sophisticated investors in the mining sector. And so we've got some big names that are highly experienced in this sector behind the company, and really have a very solid shareholder base.
Yeah, and I see Mark consistently is scooping up shares here and there at different opportune times, and it's good to see. Also, I see Tech is also a part of the roster as well, and so there's some good stuff going on there as far as the ownership goes. How about cash in the bank and expected cash spend in 2019? I know you got some upcoming drilling coming. What's your thoughts on cash in the bank, upcoming spend, and then also any known future equity financings coming along for maybe some investors' potential?
Well, we are fully cashed up for the 2019 season. You mentioned Tech. They, of course, picked up the entire back end of a financing we did just before Christmas. And so they ended up with 12.5 million shares of the company. That was a great deal for us because we were able to do that through a charity flow-through financing structure, which allowed us to get a great premium on the trading price for our financing. We were trading at 22 cents at the time. Tech bought the 12.5 million shares at 28 cents. So we were able to negotiate a nice premium to the market with that. But that allowed the front end of that financing to be set at 41.3 cents. So we did that financing at almost 100% premium to the market. That gave us 5.2 million in the treasury that we'll be able to spend in the 2019 exploration season. So that's going to fully fund us for the 15,000 meters that we plan to drill at Stardust in 2019. And we'll have to figure out, depending on the results of the drilling program, what we're going to do as a next step. 2 potential possibilities are that if we like the way the drilling's going and we're continuing to have success, we may refinance on the fly in the fall and continue to explore through the winter. This project is in the interior, and so we are capable to work 12 months out of the year up there. The other possibility is we might actually stop exploration and decide that we want to drive a decline and go underground on this, and in which case we would stop and do the permitting for the decline and refinance to facilitate that. And so, we'll have to see what comes out of this coming program before we make the final decision on exactly what the next move is, though.
I want to move over to British Columbia. Some people have said that, BC has kind of become one of the worst jurisdictions in Canada for advancing projects. What's your thought on that?
I've spent most of my career working in British Columbia, and I'll tell you, I'm very comfortable working here. This is definitely a tier 1 jurisdiction. You wake up in the morning every day knowing that you own your deposit, and that's something that you can't say in a lot of places in the world these days. And that alone puts British Columbia in a tier 1 category for me. But in addition to that, the problem that a lot of people have with working in British Columbia is the complication of First Nations. And, First Nations, in my mind, is actually an advantage of working in this jurisdiction for, I'll call them enlightened companies that understand how to work with First Nations. Our chairman, Donald McGuinness, he did 15 deals with First Nations when he was running Plutonic Power here in British Columbia. I did 11 deals with First Nations when I was working with Imperial Metals here in British Columbia. And when you can actually build a relationship with the local community and make them a part of your project, make it so that when you go to the permitting table, they're sitting shoulder to shoulder with you, asking for the permits from the government or demanding the permits from the government, that really puts you at an advantage over other companies. And I think that's where we sit right now. We've got a relatively fresh relationship with the Takla First Nation, whose core territory we're in. We're continuing to work on that relationship and build it, but thus far they are stakeholders in the company. So we have a good alignment of interest with the community. They were a big help to us in our 2018 program. They did all of our earthworks, lumber supply, that sort of thing. We're working hard to make sure that we increase the level of employment that we have from the local community in the exploration work we're going to do in 2019. So it's not a box that you check in BC. It's part of your everyday life. Making sure that you are building a relationship with the local community and using that to your advantage. So I would say that there's no better place to work anywhere in the world than British Columbia. I think that between the geologic endowment that we have here and the political stability, this is a great place to be.
So I want to talk Stardust for a moment. Give the audience an overview of the project status, what the expectations are on the upside for the deposits before the company starts to move towards advancing the project, and then kind of give us the next steps that you're seeing for the project, both for 2019 and also 2020.
Sure. Well, Stardust, as I mentioned earlier, is a historic project. The discovery goes back to 1944. So over the years, there has been $28 million worth of historic exploration work put into this project. That's resulted in 87,000 meters of drilling, 427 drill holes, and there's been a 2.2 kilometer long corridor of mineralization that has been identified over that time. So this is clearly a big system already before we even get started doing our exploration. What's unique now is that we've taken all of the data that had been gathered historically and we've put it into an electronic database. So this is our leg up that we've got over any of the historic work that was done. We can now model things in 3 dimensions, and we can use all the tools like geophysics and geochemistry to our better advantage in terms of understanding where we're at in the system and how to explore it. And I think that the proof is in our 2018 exploration results when we hit hole 421, which returned 100 meters of 5% copper equivalent. So that was a tremendous mineralized intercept that was head and shoulders stronger than anything that had ever been seen on the property previously. There is an existing resource on the property, and the average thickness within that resource is about 4.3 meters, which is fairly respectable. But now we've drilled across a fault into a new area that's never been explored before, and we hit 100 meters at 5% copper equivalent. Clearly, we're into something that is different and much better. The whole theory of our 2018 exploration campaign was to explore to see if we could find fluid feeder pathways, with theory that if we could find one of those, we would be into thicker, stronger, more robust mineralization, and that's exactly what we found. So everything's working out well so far. In 2019, we're going to go out and drill the area around hole 421 and see if we can build some tonnage in this new area. And, depending on the result, as I mentioned earlier, we may decide to just continue to explore in 2019 and drill around the calendar. We can actually drill through the winter in this area, so we'd have to refinance to do that on the fly. But I think that's if we get the results that we're looking for, I think that's something that will happen relatively easily. And of course, the other option is we might want to actually run a decline down to get into the area of this deeper mineralization and explore it from underground. So you will have to see what the results from our 2019 drill program looks like before we make a decision how we're going to go there.
That sounds good. So Steve, give the audience some perspective just a little bit as to the advantages and disadvantages of Stardust, and what aspect of the project folks really should look hard at this point?
Well, again, it's that theme of flight to quality. It's very, very rare to find a project that's got these sorts of high grade over big thicknesses like that. So 100-meter intercept of 5% copper equivalent is not very common to find. I would argue that it was probably one of the best drill holes that was drilled in Canada in 2018. And even looking worldwide, it's hard to find something that would beat that sort of intercept. So as long as we continue to hit the thicknesses and the rich mineralization that we hit in that one hole in 2018, going forward, I think that this is going to be one of the most exciting exploration projects anywhere globally in 2019.
Well, is there anything you can pick apart on the project, Steve? Is there anything that is a caution internally there for the folks? Is there anything that's a concern for you guys at this point, or is everything looking quite good?
Look, if you were going to try to pick a spot to put the ideal mining project in British Columbia, it would be exactly where Stardust is at. We're 120 kilometers northwest of the Mount Milligan mine, 200 kilometers south of Chemes mine. So we're in a richly endowed area. We're far enough away from civilization that we're not going to get the NIMBY effect, but we're close enough to civilization that we've got all the advantages of infrastructure. There's no helicopter budget needed for this project. You can drive a Cadillac onto the property, so we got good road access. There's rail 38 kilometers to the west. There's power in the area. We've got a relatively local workforce that we can draw upon. We're in the interior, so we don't have any steep precipitous terrain. We've got low rolling topography. We've got interior climatic conditions, so you don't get the 40 or 50 feet of snow in the wintertime that you hear about in some of the other parts of the province. We get 4 or 5 feet of snow in the winter. So this really is a project that seems to have everything going for it. And I couldn't be happier to have a project in Stardust.
So the project has historic, quite a bit of history with it. One of the things you guys, I'm sure you have, is quite a bit of data. Can you kind of give us just an overview of that, and maybe after reviewing the data that you guys, I'm sure, poured over quite a bit at this point, what kind of new things are really being employed that you guys are seeing with the project that maybe folks in the past, besides technology, of course, did not see?
Carbonate replacement systems are very difficult projects to explore. So you need to make sure that you use everything to your advantage you can if you're going to explore this type of system. And so taking all the data, put it into a database seemed like a common sense first step for us. And we spent about 4 months in the winter of 2017, 2018, getting most of the data into a database. And actually, we've continued that effort over this last winter. We've probably spent another 2 months with our team poring over the details of some of that historically recorded data and making sure that it was properly represented in the database so that we have great confidence with the information in the electronic database going forward. Now that we've got it in that form, being able to do the 3-dimensional visualization in a mine modeling software package has been a huge help to us. I don't think that it would have been obvious to drill hole 421 that we drilled in for 2018 by doing it off of paper copy. That's the sort of thing that only comes out of the targeting using all of the tools at the same time. You can turn on and off the geochemistry, the metal ratios, the grade shells, geophysics, all of this information that's in this 3-dimensional mine modeling software. It takes all of those tools to be able to target these drill holes the way we have. And so I think that was our advantage, was using modern technology where it hadn't been employed previously, even though there was some great geologists that had worked on the project previously and were able to take advantage of it.
So what about community around Stardust and Sun's social work? What are you guys doing on this front?
Well, that's as I said, it's something that we work on every day, and working with the local community, building relationships, and that is working from both a commercial perspective, making sure that we have opportunities for local First Nation businesses to participate in the project, but also on a social perspective. We're going to be sponsoring the local fishing derby this coming year, and I'll be going up and sitting in a boat with some of the local folks to get to know them a little bit, and hopefully getting them to know me a little bit. It's important that they know and trust the people that are working in their community, and so this is really the mentality that we bring and try to inspire our team with. working with the local community is very important, and we have to take that part of the job very seriously. I always have in the other projects that I've worked on, and it's really, at the end of the day, worked out to our benefit. So I think this is an approach that more companies are going to have to start to become aware of and become comfortable with, but we certainly are early adopters of this sort of mentality in terms of working with local communities.
So outside of Stardust, is Sun looking at other projects and opportunities, or is the focus really entirely with Stardust to prove that up?
Right now, our focus is certainly on Stardust. We don't ignore other opportunities. If another opportunity came along that was obviously going to add value for shareholders, we would certainly take that seriously. But at this time, you're given a fixed bucket full of money, and you can only spend that money. You have to choose the best way to spend it. And I can't imagine wanting to spend an exploration dollar on another project ahead of Stardust at this point. So acquiring other projects to get into the portfolio just means that we would have things sitting on the shelf. Adds a little bit of potential for the future to the company, but right now we're certainly going to remain focused entirely on Stardust.
Steve, so you've got 4 names in the oxygen portfolio: Sun Metals, Liberty Gold, Pure Gold, and Discovery Metals. Which one disappears first?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know as that I'm the appropriate one to answer that question. But I think that each one of those teams has a very talented group leading it, and I think it's going to be good fun competing with our sister companies to see who can outperform the others. And I think we all have a great shot at being something that's going to be recognized by the market as a great takeover candidate. So it's good fun to be in that competition.
So Steve, on that topic also, when we talked to Cal over at Liberty, what's the are you guys, as far as your shareholding ownership? Obviously there's shares held in the company that you run, but do you also look at the other oxygen companies as far as shareholding for yourself personally?
Yeah, I do have the other companies in my PA. That's I think the nature of the people that are involved in these sorts of things were investors, and when you see good value in the market like we have right now, it's hard not to pick a little bit of the oxygen group companies up and have them in your portfolio. This is really a tremendous opportunity as far as I'm concerned. We've been in a bear market for how long is it now? 7 years, and it seems like we're poised to have the markets turn around and more value start to flow back into the mining sectors. But at this point in time, there are a lot of things that are undervalued out there. So great opportunity to try to add those to your personal account.
So why should investors, potential investors, be taking a look at Sun Metals today? What would you say to potential investors?
I think that if you believe in the mining sector at all, I can't imagine a more exciting place to have your investment for 2019. This is, as I said, an opportunity to participate as we explore in the area of hole 421, which was one of the best results in the world in 2018. And to be able to watch the story unfold, I think is going to be very exciting for our investors. And it's certainly a great opportunity for me to be involved in it, having a front row seat in it all, but the investors are going to certainly be equal participants as we move along.
So Steve, how can investors reach out to the company for more information?
Well, the first place is through our website, sunmetals.ca. We've got some great things on there, including some videos of Dr. Peter McGaw taking a look at the core in hole 421 and giving his impressions of what he thinks of the system based on his observations in that drill hole. And anybody that wants to phone the company can phone me directly at 604-697-4952. And I spend a good part of my day speaking to investors and analysts. And, there's nothing better than talking about a story that's as exciting as this one.
Well, Steve, it was a pleasure. I really appreciate you coming on and taking some time with us today.
All right, thank you.